Presidential legacies tend to be debated for decades, but in the 4 months since Joe Biden left office, a consensus seems to have emerged on 2 key issues. His decision to stand for a second term all but guaranteed Donald Trump's return to power, and that efforts to hide his infirmities were disastrous and dishonest. Tonight, on a special edition of Washington Week, Jake Tapper and Alex Thompson answer questions about Joe Biden's original sin. Next.
This is Washington Week with The Atlantic. Corporate funding provided by Consumer Cellular.
Certified financial planner professionals are proud to support Washington Week with The Atlantic. CFP professionals are committed to acting in their clients' best interest. More information at letsmakeaplan.org.
Additional funding is provided by Koo and Patricia Ewan through the Ewan Foundation, committed to bridging cultural differences in our communities. Sandra and Carl DeLay Magnuson, Rose Herschel and Andy Shreves, Robert and Susan Rosenbaum, the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, and by contributions to your PBS station from viewers like you. Thank you. Once again, from the David M. Rubenstein studio at WETA in Washington, Editor-in-Chief of The Atlantic and moderator, Jeffrey Goldberg.
Good evening and welcome to Washington Week. Tonight, we'll discuss a book that has enthralled Washington and much of the nation, Original Sin, President Biden's decline, its cover-up, and his disastrous choice to run again. Joining me are its authors, Jake Tapper, CNN's lead anchor and chief Washington correspondent, and Alex Thompson, a national political correspondent at Axios. Gentlemen, thank you for being here in what is only your 3rd interview of the day. I appreciate it.
But the best.
But the best certainly no, save the best for the middle. Let's start with, let's jump into the key moment, a key moment in American history, one of the most dramatic moments in American political history, at the debate co-moderated by you, Jake, June of last year, in which Joe Biden essentially lost the election for the Democrats, perhaps, certainly lost the nomination. I just want you to watch this key moment with me, and we'll talk about it.
We'd be able to help make sure that all those things we need to do, child care, elder care, making sure that we continue to strengthen our health care system, making sure that we're able to make every single solitary person eligible for what I've been able to do with the COVID, with dealing with everything we have to do with, look, if we finally beat Medicare.
Jake.
It's painful. It's painful to watch.
You're sitting 15 feet away.
Yeah, something like that.
Maybe next to Dana Bash, your co-moderator. What are you thinking at that moment?
I'm thinking, well, what I wrote on the iPad to communicate with the control room is what I was thinking, a very clean version of what I was thinking, which is, holy smokes. That's what I wrote, holy smokes. I couldn't believe it. We had all watched Joe Biden through the years, and we'd watched him becoming elderly. But this was something else. This was addled. This was non-functioning. This was not able to follow his own train of thought. And you know, this isn't just like catching him at the beach and asking him a question when he's not in the right spirit, or not in the right state of mind. This is the debate where he needs to prove his acuity and ability to be president, because so many Americans were worried that he didn't have that ability.
Right, right. You're watching it, I assume.
Yeah, in Atlanta.
And you're you've already been reporting, obviously, on Biden and some of the doubts and worries about Biden. What was going through your mind?
That even though, honestly, I thought it was bad, I did not think it was this bad. And it was sort of shocking that they had let him go out on that stage, especially given that so many people around Joe Biden have been around him for so long and say they love him. And the fact that and now we know from our reporting in this book that this was not the first time or even close to the first time that he had acted that way behind closed doors. And the fact that they let him go out there with the potential that this could happen and let him, in some ways, hurt his legacy and embarrass himself on the world stage, I just felt sad.
So is this when you realized that the White House was lying to the public, lying to the media about Joe Biden's condition? Or was this, I'm wondering how you moved cognitively through the stages here. Did you immediately think to yourself, oh my God, I've been lied to? Or, wow, he's having a really bad night?
I thought that they had been misrepresenting his acuity for a little bit then, at that point. And our reporting suggests that he really started to deteriorate in the summer and fall of 2023. I didn't see him all that often, and I didn't know how bad it was, but it seemed odd. In retrospect, I mean, I asked people about it, and I heard what I'm sure you heard, what I'm sure Alex heard, which is he's fine, he's fine, he's fine. He's 81, of course, he's elderly, but he's great. His decision-making solid, he's great in meetings, blah, blah, blah. And I didn't believe them, but I didn't have any evidence to report that they were lying. When he came out and he could not deliver what any politician should be able to do, a 90-minute debate discussing why you should be elected.
Straightforward questions,
yeah,
actually.
I mean, some of the questions were honestly like issues that he should have wanted to talk about and should have been able to talk about brilliantly.
Yeah.
And that's when I realized, it wasn't even about, oh my God, I've been lied to. It was, I had the same thought that some Democrats told us, Democrats who worked for Biden told us, they had that during that debate, which was, oh my God, who's running the country?
Well, who was running the country?
Well, I just wanted to first add, beginning in April 2023, I'd really started honing in on this issue because of what some people in the White House were saying about their concerns, not necessarily in the moment, but certainly that he could not do a re-election campaign or serve 4 more years.
Right.
And in response to that reporting, the White House said false. They denied it, they denied it, they denied it, and I was hearing otherwise. So I had stopped believing their denials for a while. But in terms of who was running the White House, it's a small group of people that have been around. Some people within the administration called them the Politburo. That's the term we use in the book.
Give us the names of the 3 or 4.
Mike Donilon, Biden's longtime political liaison. Steve Ricchetti, who was sort of the legislative liaison, plus like a friend. Bruce Reed, at times, depending on his situation with the Biden people. Ron Klain. And then there are some people outside the Politburo that are closer to family, which would be obviously Jill Biden, Hunter Biden, but then Jill's main chief of staff, Anthony Bernal, and sort of his like deputy in some ways, Annie Tomasini, who is often Biden's traveling chief of staff.
Mm-hmm. And Joe Biden himself also is part of this. Joe Biden is not like, it's not Weekend at Bernie's, right? He has some purchase here. He has some agency, and he's aware of some of what's going on. He might be in denial about it, but he's aware of the fact that they are keeping the cabinet away from him. They are keeping some White House staffers away from him. They are keeping members of Congress away from him. He knows what's
certainly
going on.
Keeping the press.
Oh, sure, absolutely.
It's interesting, and we talked about this on your show a couple of weeks ago when I saw President Trump a few weeks ago. He started by saying, I bet Joe Biden would never do this.
Which is true.
And I took that as, and this is the conversation we had, I took it as, oh man, he never stops talking about Joe Biden. And you took it as, well, that is actually true. And it's true. I've interviewed Donald Trump more than I've interviewed Joe Biden.
I remember during the Biden years, because people don't know that you and I are friends, that you were frustrated. You had interviewed
constantly.
You had interviewed Obama several times about his presidency. You're a very serious journalist, and you know a lot about foreign policy, and you wanted to talk about this, which was like a section of his job that he really enjoyed and liked talking about, and they wouldn't let you do it.
Well, it wasn't just about you or the Atlantic either. This is the first president in decades, perhaps actually ever. It's hard to know with going back decades, who never sat for an interview with reporters with the New York Times, the Washington Post, the Wall Street Journal, or Reuters. Did not do it all 4 years.
So he only did one interview with a national newspaper, and that was on his way out the door with USA Today. That was it.
Yeah. No. And so this brings, and we're getting granular, but this is Washington Week. We're supposed to be granular. Anita Dunn, who is kind of she was the czar of communications in the Biden White House. And I asked Anita periodically for 4 years, and and Anita Dunn strung me along for 4 years.
Yep.
And strung a lot of other people along for 4 years. You didn't name her as part of the Politburo.
Well, she was right outside it, though.
Yes, incredibly powerful.
But the question that comes to mind, I think, for a lot of people is, was this group around Biden, who are obviously trying to keep people from understanding how diminished he was, were they lying to themselves, or were they just lying?
I think both.
Yeah, but I think
Go ahead.
I think there were honest people that realized that we have one person quote in the book that the interview that Jake did in 2022, that by the next year he was no longer capable of handling that 15-minute interview.
It was a nothing interview that, it was a 15-minute interview.
Straightforward question.
Yeah, just like you have like 6 questions or whatever. One's on Putin, one's on people think you're too old. One, I forget what they all were, but I mean, it wasn't like a really. This is going to be more in depth than that. But even that, a top aide told us he could not have done that in 2023, 1 year later.
Let me hone in on this. This group of people who were essentially running the country, or at least, I think you use in the book, you talk about Biden as kind of the chairman of the board.
A senior member of the board.
A senior member.
But that's not us. That's a cabinet secretary.
No, I understand.
Yeah,
I understand.
tells
And
us
by
that.
the way, the only people who were kept further away from Biden than the press were the members of the cabinet.
Yep.
But that's a separate subject. Do these people really believe that he was okay?
I think they believed this.
Did they convince themselves of that?
1, Joe Biden is the only person who has ever beaten Donald Trump. 2, Donald Trump is an existential threat to the country. 3, Joe Biden's the incumbent president, and he has decided he's going to run for re-election. 4, all we have to do is get through Election Day, and then we can figure it out after that.
But then it could be weekend at Bernie's. For all they care.
or then, who knows after that.
Number
it was
3
also
is
in their self-interest to believe that. Though.
right.
Yeah,
Number
but
3
Mike
is
Donnelly demands, before he goes over to the Biden campaign in 2024, he demands that they pay him $4 million for that. The campaign chair, the campaign manager, essentially, Jen O'Malley Dillon, was paid $300,000 for running the campaign. $4 million. Biden says, pay him. And they pay him $4 million. So
good business.
I don't know if people out there who donated to the Biden campaign knew that that's where some of their money was going,
Right.
$4 million to Mike Donnelly.
Right. So you use the term, let's go on to this, the cover-up. Define cover-up.
I think that the way that we define cover-up is the Biden that was on that debate stage. It was not the first time that Joe Biden appeared. And over the course of the 9 months preceding it, you had an increasingly hectic efforts to try to hide the extent of the decline from the American people, from reporters, from members of the Democratic Party, from members of their own cabinet.
Literal hiding in a kind of way.
Yeah.
Like
Yes.
he's not going to go do this, he's not going to go do that.
Right,
Yes.
and we're not going to let him meet with these cabinet officials, and we're not going to let him meet with these White House staffers, or we're not going to, or when he does an event with donors, when he does a fundraiser of just 40 people, we're going to put a teleprompter in the back of the room so he can speak. Even though that's something that any politician should be able to do without a teleprompter. Cover-up is defined as hiding something bad. That's what's happened. We're not alleging criminality. You're allowed to lie to the American people. That's not a crime. Politicians have been doing that since this country was founded.
Yeah, yeah. One of the interesting subjects here that's come out in the past week, as you guys are talking about the book, is the role of the media. I don't want to do like an extended media criticism here, especially because I'm not sure it's actually correct. You were doing reporting.
That's true.
In 2023, you were bringing this up. There's a quote that I want to show you. It's actually, it's not just you guys. Ezra Klein was asking questions, the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal. I want to show you a quote from Mark Leibovich writing in The Atlantic in June of 2022.
100%.
And the article is called "Why Biden Shouldn't Run in 2024." Biden is by no means the more eloquent character he was in his younger days. It can be painful to watch him give prepared speeches. His tone can be tentative, and certain sentences can become hopscotching journeys. His aides in the room look visibly nervous at times, and so on. I don't understand how this narrative has developed that no one in the media, or that the media was covering for Biden. I think what might be going on here is a lack of understanding about how reporting works. In order to prove that he's diminished, you have to have people, sources inside, telling you this? Give me your thoughts on this question.
Certainly, certainly there were a lot of folks in the conservative media, in the pro-Trump media, at Fox and elsewhere, who were running clips of Biden and saying, I think it was one Fox anchor called him Joe Sippy Cup Biden or whatever. They were saying things along those lines. And they were making a bigger deal about doubts about his acuity than it could be said the legacy media was. And I think that's fair for them to say we were making a bigger deal. But as you point out, there is a difference. And I'm not belittling the importance of airing those clips. I aired some of them too. There is a difference between airing a clip and saying that's odd, that's unusual, it seems like something's going on. And what Alex and I have been able to do, which is after the election, all those Democrats, we talked to more than 200 sources for this book, almost all of them Democrats, almost all of them after the election, who were telling us what was really going on behind the scenes. And the anecdotes and the concerns that we bring forward in this book is investigative journalism, and that is different from observational punditry.
I would also just add that, and I understand the pushback that, Biden's age was constantly a topic, right? And, the Mark Leibovich story is a perfect example. But that was about sort of in a political lens, a horse race lens.
Right.
I do not feel there was a ton of investigative reporting about his ability to do the job and how his age was really affecting it. And I think also, look at the reaction to the Wall Street Journal story in June of 2024, just weeks before the debate. There are a lot of reporters that sort of threw shade at that story. There was not as much solidarity.
Not sort of. There were people that attacked journalists who attacked Annie Linsky and Siobhan Hughes, two excellent Wall Street Journal reporters who were raked through the coals by not just the White House and Democrats, but by their own colleagues for just reporting the truth about what they could find out at that moment in time.
Right. Well, talk a little bit about. Well, I want you to watch something because this goes to the question of cover-up. Watch this clip from Joe Biden speaking in 2016 at the convention.
We have the most productive workers in the world, and given a fair shot, given a fair chance, Americans have never, ever, ever, ever let their country down. Never. Never.
That's 2016?
16, yeah. I mean, so here's the thing.
That's like watching a different person.
Well, how do you? That's why maybe this is a semantic debate. But how do you? It was all there. It's all right in front of your eyes.
Yeah.
That is a vital man with a full voice, energy, coherence.
Although I will say, our reporting suggests that his diminishment began a year before that his diminishment began in 2015 with the death of Beau. Because what seemed to happen, Jeffrey, is there were two Joe Bidens. There was the fine Joe Biden that we just saw in that clip right there, and then there was the non-functioning Biden that we saw during the debate. And the non-functioning Biden would rear his head increasingly and more and more disturbingly as time went on. So when Barack Obama told Joe Biden that he didn't think he should run or suggested you should take care of yourself, part of what I think what Obama was seeing in Biden was the non-functioning Joe Biden. Now, the question is, when did the non-functioning Biden emerge so often? It was a real question as to whether he should serve as president. And I think that is probably not till 2023 and 2024.
Right. And I would just add that, yes, a lot of this was out there, but what was happening in front of the scenes was much worse behind the scenes. They were propping up the best version of him through those times. And if I believe that if the media had done a better job, then the debate would not have been so shocking to so many people.
Right. Well, you can lead people to stories that you write, but you can't make them read them. And I think that's part of the issue. I'm not trying to make excuses. No. You've been very forthright about your critique of softness on the part of the media on the question. But let me ask you this, because this is the actual serious matter here. By 2023, 2024, Joe Biden was being limited, according to your reporting, in even the number of hours where he was functioning as president. It's a 24-hour-a-day job. It's become a cliche, but if you've woken up at 3 a.m. to find out that a North Korean missile is heading toward Japan, you've got to react.
And we have cabinet secretaries in the book, as you know, who are telling us that by 2024, they do not have faith that Joe Biden could be relied upon for that 3 a.m. phone call. And that's chilling. Chilling.
How do you... I feel like I'm asking a question on behalf of just the average citizen or average voter. How do you, as a Washington professional, as a senior member of the White House staff, look at that situation, reach that conclusion, and then say, we're just going to use your language, cover it up? I just don't understand.
It's tough to understand it, but if you can, first of all, in the historical context, one of the things that it's important for people out there to understand is the presidency has maybe never been stronger, and political parties in the legislative branch have never been weaker.
Yeah.
The political parties, I mean, Jamie Harrison, who was the DNC chair, I don't know one person who thinks he could call up President Biden and tell him anything.
Yeah.
You know, and that's not even necessarily his fault. The parties are just so weak, and he was picked to be the weak leader of a weak party. And the Republican, the GOP isn't particularly strong either.
I would also say how you justify it. If you believe Donald Trump is an existential threat to democracy, you can justify almost anything, including doing at times undemocratic things.
Get a mannequin would be better from the perspective of a lot of critics of Donald Trump.
There are tens of millions of people in this country that would prefer Joe Biden at 100 years old to Donald Trump right now.
That's an interesting. It's obviously an interesting point, but it's also beside the point. One of the interesting things about the larger conversation that you guys have opened is that there's a lot of criticism of Donald Trump and the Republicans in Congress not checking his power, not playing their role on behalf of their branch of government. But what this book is about is also, and we haven't really talked about it that much, and people aren't talking about it that much, Democrats in Congress were very, very late and very, very soft on this issue. They could have, in 2022, said enough.
Yeah.
In 2023, enough. Where were they?
Well, first of all, a lot of them were shunted off to the side and didn't get a lot of access starting in 2022, 2023. And so some of them would, we have members of Congress in the book who see Biden at the Christmas party in 2022 and then don't see him again in person until the next Christmas party in 2023. And it's like he's aged 20 years in that 1 year, and they remark to each other. But where are the incentive structures in our politics for people to be brave? Where are the incentive structures for people in our politics to raise their hand and say the emperor has no clothes? There aren't any. I mean, I understand
there was one congressman.
Dean Phillips, who ran against Joe Biden and was defenestrated. And, you know, who knows what he's going to do next. He's out of Congress. He was utterly destroyed and humiliated. Robert Hur, the special counsel, tried to tell the truth about what he saw behind the scenes. We've now all heard the Hur tapes, and oh my God, that's the same Joe Biden that was at the debate.
And the White House was upset with Merrick Garland for even having, I mean, there was talk about that.
They were upset at Merrick Garland for not editing the Hur report to remove the section that said, I'm not, even though Joe Biden mishandled classified information, I'm not going to prosecute because I don't think I could get a conviction, because the jury would see him as a well-meaning, sympathetic old man with a poor memory, which was the nicest thing he could say about Joe Biden.
Right. There's so much more to talk about. One quick question and then one slow question for you. Kamala Harris, where was she?
Well, after the Hur report, she became the main out-front validator for Joe Biden's fitness. She chose to do that. And she said that the Hur report was politically motivated, used her background as a prosecutor to say it was sloppy, and she became, she basically put all of her chips in with Joe Biden. Now, was she in every meeting? No. So maybe she can claim plausibly that maybe she never saw the non-functioning Biden. I'd also say within this context, the Joe Biden, his inner circle, had a very dim view of her, did not think that she could beat Donald Trump. Still are, they'll still point to her and say, I told you so.
Right. And
they use her, political standing as an excuse to justify running for re-election.
Right. Jake, I want to ask you this. What, based on your reporting on Biden, what have you learned about how the press should cover Donald Trump right now?
I don't think that the press should cover any president going forward, without demanding full and complete transparency about health records, which we're not getting from Trump. We still don't know why he went to Walter Reed in 2019. And I think that we need to be skeptical of everything that we are told by people in power And I mean, that obviously should be the mantra of being a journalist to begin with. If your mother tells you she loves you, get a second source. Right. But we just need to remember that. Like, politicians lie, White Houses lie, power is an aphrodisiac. And we just need to all remember that and not take at face value anything that we're told.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thanks,
this has been very interesting. We're going to have to leave it there for now, but I want to thank our guests for joining me, and thank you at home for watching us. I'm Jeffrey Goldberg. Good night from Washington.
Corporate funding for Washington Week with The Atlantic is provided by...
In 1995, two friends set out to make wireless coverage accessible to all. With no long-term contracts, nationwide coverage, and 100% U.S.-based customer support. Consumer Cellular. Freedom calls.
Certified financial planner professionals are proud to support Washington Week with The Atlantic. CFP professionals are committed to acting in their clients' best interest. More information at letsmakeaplan.org.
Additional funding is provided by Koo and Patricia Ewan for the Ewan Foundation, committed to bridging cultural differences in our communities. Sandra and Carl DeLay Magnuson, Rose Herschel and Andy Shreves, Robert and Susan Rosenbaum, the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, and by contributions to your PBS station from viewers like you. Thank you.
You're watching PBS.